3. Pursuit of happiness. We are not happy about the decisions that are being made in our government. Our elected officials are not acting in our best interests, nor are they protecting the people of this country so that they can pursue that happiness. On February 14th, 2018, at 2:20 p.m., the fire alarm went off. This was the second one of the day. I had complained to my teacher and said that I wasn't going outside again. It was hot and I was tired, yet she said that we had to go. She was following protocol. Little did we know our evacuation route was taking us directly to the shooter. If it had not been for the bravery and strength of the faculty and administration, we would have walked straight into the shooter's line of fire. And even more of the students of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, myself included, would not be standing here before you today. It is nothing but luck that saved us from being killed, and this is not okay. While the people around me recognized the gunshots, all I could hear was "get down, get down, get down," and "shooter." Without thinking, I ran to the opposite side of campus, fearing for my life. A school that once reverberated with laughter and inquisitive thoughts now reverberates with the screams and cries of thousands of students fearing for their lives. This is not okay. Trapped in a classroom sharing a feeling of numbness and agony with my peers, our only source of information was what our teachers were telling us and the information that was circulating within the school via group chats. Guys, this is not a drill. 5 people are dead, 20 injured. This was a message in one of my group chats. That is not okay. We received videos from our friends and peers being shot and being shot at. Videos that shook us to our cores. Helicopters above us and police sirens ringing in our ears. The sounds of choppers now haunt us and police sirens stalk us. 2 days after the shooting, when I was picking up my medicine from a CVS drive-thru, the cash register drawer receded and made a noise that I swore was a gunshot. I shouldn't have been allowed to make that association. That is not okay. As students, we should not have to fear for our lives. We should not have to run for our lives. We should not have to hear the sound of gunfire on a school campus. We should not have to hear the screams of our peers, of our friends, of our teachers, of our mentors. That is not okay. We are losing sleep. All we can remember are the screams and cries and stampede of feet running for their lives. Some of us are unable to stay awake. All we can do is sleep because when we are awake, we are haunted by the memories of that day, of what happened to us. We can only imagine what could have been avoided if common sense gun control had been implemented after the first mass shooting, as was the case in so many other countries. Schools were once places of learning, of respect, of dignity. They have now become sacrilege. They are now shooting grounds, and this is not okay. So I ask, Congress and Senate,
students from Parkland,
what if that had happened to you or to your children? Would it take you so long to make a difference? Would it take you this long to effect change and create policy and propose laws that could stem the tide of violence? Would it? No more. No more placing nonsensical politics above our lives. No more accepting donations from the NRA, who seem to care more about their right to own a gun than the lives of American children. They protect the Second Amendment, yet the NRA doesn't seem to realize that it was written 241 years ago. During that interval, our guns have changed tremendously, yet our gun laws have not. And that is not okay. The National Rifle Association pushes to preserve our right to bear arms per the Second Amendment. Yet what they don't say is that the Second Amendment was written in order to keep and preserve a well-regulated militia. The United States has the most powerful military in the world. There is no need to keep and preserve a well-regulated militia. We live in a first world country that many dream of coming
did you hear that one?
Yeah. They dream of coming here because we serve and protect our citizens.
That's why I finally woke up and got the camera
and
on.
Lawmakers are slapping us, students, in the face. And this is not okay.
And I'm pulling one
you,
down.
Congress and Senate, out with partisan politics. Now is not the time to be fighting over whose views are right and wrong. Now is the time for action. I beseech our American lawmakers from Congress and Senate to stop slinging mud across the aisle and come up with a bipartisan solution to an obvious epidemic of gun violence and mass shooting in America. A solution that will save lives. A solution that will prevent another mass shooting like the ones at Columbine, Virginia Tech, Aurora, Sandy Hook Elementary, San Bernardino,
they walked out in Hialeah,
Las Vegas, and most recently my school,
the whole school walked out. Remember in LA in the 70s?
Now is a time for change.
John Fernandez
Never
was in
again
the
will
middle
this
of that.
happen in our country, to our students, to us. We the students will make a difference. Our voices will be heard, and we will not be silenced.
Too bad he
So I
sold
say,
out.
students, stand up for yourselves and stand up for others. We are the future. Let us change the
They
future,
are the
and let us
future.
do it now.
Oh.
Signed, Dimitri Hoff, Senior.
I love you
Marjorie
kids.
Stoneman Douglas High School, 17 years old, survivor.
We have actually one more speaker, with due respect, and then Representative Jacobs and I have a few comments, but let's hear about it.
Cool. Gene, we got the shit.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanzel Phillip. I am 16 years old and I'm a 10th grader at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. To think, last week at this exact time, I was complaining about not wanting to go to rehearsal after school and trying to think of an excuse to get out of it. That day will be with all of us and all of our parents, all of our teachers, for the rest of our lives. When we saw this stuff on the news, I wept and wondered how anyone could let this happen, how our government could let this happen to men, women, and our children. We don't want to take away your guns. We don't want to get rid of the Second Amendment. We want things to be done to save our lives. We want gun policies that prevent an 18-year-old from killing 17 of our friends. We want mental health tests that won't allow them to purchase these guns. When did politics and money from the NRA become more important than our lives? Our message is simple, and it's never again. To Marion Hammer and to everyone at the NRA and everyone affiliated with the NRA, we are not afraid of you. We will not be silenced by anything that you have to say. We are here, our voices are loud, and we're not stopping until change happens. Never again will this ever happen to any one of my friends. I will never, no one's parents should be put through that ever again. Never again. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, so very much. I think that they have said more than we possibly could. I know that Representative Jacobs has a few thoughts as we move into the afternoon session for meetings.
Thank you, Senator Book. We've had a group of kids that we've scheduled for over 70 different meetings that are taking place here in the Capitol. There's a lot of passion, as you just heard, but I want to share with you that while there is that passion and frustration that things don't happen immediately, that the expressions coming from leadership on both sides of the aisle is that we will not leave this session without sensible gun law changes, without sensible changes to mental health, without the conversation and the funding that's necessary to secure our schools and harden our infrastructure so that, as the children have said to you, this never happens again. This is not a partisan issue. While some things you may have heard today, we know that the way we get there is small steps at a time. For those of us that are on the same side of the aisle and those of us that are on opposite sides of the aisle, I've kind of been describing this as a trust fall, that we are all standing together, regardless of party, determined that something good is going to come out of this senseless and terrible tragedy. It is what I am dedicated to doing. It is what I know my colleagues on my side of the aisle. It is what I am hearing from the Speaker and from the President and from the Governor, all of whom, and many more, took the time to come down to Parkland to see what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, a lesson that they are determined to see will not ever happen again. So, Senator Book, I just want to thank you for the tireless work. She didn't tell you, but she actually slept on a cot last night with all of these children, and she truly deserves our congratulations for the hard work it took to get this done. And again, this is not a one and done. This is first part of a long journey. Senator Book.
Thank you so much, Representative Jacobs.
And good afternoon from Washington, D.C. I am Kristen Welker in for Craig Melvin. We start with a day of outrage and hope in Florida's capital as you were just witnessing students leading protests demanding action on gun reform in the wake of last week's tragic shooting at Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. You are looking at protesters inside and outside of Florida State Capitol.
Take what I can get.
And also students walking out of school in solidarity in Oakland Park, Florida. NBC's Maya Rodriguez is covering it all for us from Tallahassee, Florida. Maya, what an incredible day it has been so far. The testimonials we have heard from the students there, incredibly eloquent, passionate, outspoken, saying never again, saying they are not afraid of the NRA. Tell us what your takeaways were.
You know, Kristen, you've been hearing it from inside. We are here outside in the rally. People have been speaking at this podium for well over an hour now, and you are right. They have been absolutely passionate about this issue, specifically gun control, mental health, and school safety. Basically, the entire crowd here saying they don't want to see this happen ever again. We've heard chants of books, not guns. We want change now. There are hundreds upon hundreds of people. In fact, they've had to shut down the main street that runs right in front of the state capitol here because the crowd grew so large out here. Joining us right now is a student from here in Leon County. Her name's Carson Kenny. Carson, thank you so much for joining us out here. First of all, I know you guys have been given basically an excused absence to be out here. Why was it important for you to be at this march?
Well, it was important for me and a lot of my friends to come and support the Stoneman Douglas students and supporting them through this horrible tragedy and everything that they want to do to help, and we wanted to help them because we believe also that assault weapons, that this should not have happened, that assault weapons should be not allowed because this man, or this child basically, was allowed to get this gun, and because of that this horrible tragedy happened. And so we want to support the students in trying to make that change.
You're part of a generation that has seen so many mass shootings. What went through your mind when you heard about what had happened down at Stoneman Douglas in Parkland?
Well, honestly, because these school shootings have been so prevalent lately, it wasn't as much of a shock as it should have been, but it was also surprising that it happened in Florida and that it was much closer to home than any of the other school shootings have been. So it was just a horrible, horrible thing to hear that happened.
Why do you think people have been so galvanized around this particular shooting?
Well, I think that with the current political climate getting more and more liberal, as you could say, and more this generation wanting change, and because there were so many deaths, 17, it was one of the most deathly school shootings in America's history, and so I think that this is kind of the last straw with the amount of shootings we've had.
Quite frankly, to attend this rally that come up from Orlando, from Tampa, obviously from here in Tallahassee, and a lot of them have told us that this spread basically like wildfire on social media. That is how they were able to organize so quickly and get up here, because keep in mind, this shooting only happened 1 week ago. Kristen?
Maya, something that Carson Kenny said that really struck me, she said that she wasn't in as much as shock as she should have been. In essence, that these school shootings are becoming a part of the reality that they are growing up with. We know that the students are going to be having meetings throughout the day with lawmakers there in Tallahassee. Tell me what we're expecting for the rest of the day. What are you going to be watching for?
Who have been inside the legislative chambers meeting with about 70 lawmakers, both Republicans and Democrats. They've been making their way in groups of 10 and 20 to meet with these lawmakers to talk about specific issues related to gun control and mental health and school safety. We do know that later this afternoon, between 5 and 7 p.m., these students will also be meeting with Republican Governor Rick Scott. They will be doing that in groups of 20. Keep in mind, these kids got here very, very late last night. They spent the night sleeping in the local civic center. They woke up very early this morning, basically had breakfast and came over here just before 8 o'clock this morning. So it has indeed been a long day for them, and it is still going on. Kristen?
Obviously, the issue of gun control, stiffer gun laws, one of the most fraught, divisive issues in our country. We have seen Washington try to tackle this in the past, most recently after 20 children were killed at Sandy Hook Elementary School back in 2013. The Senate voted against expanding background checks. We are seeing perhaps the most energized movement since Sandy Hook to try to get something done, to try to get stiffer gun laws enacted. And again, the student there saying, we're not afraid of the NRA. These students don't seem to be going anywhere, and yet we know the very steep odds they are facing. What are they telling you about how determined they are, how much staying power they have? Are they aware of how tough this fight's going to be?
They know it's difficult, and they know that change does not come easily out here, but they do feel like they do have momentum now, unlike what they've seen in previous mass shootings. And of course, part of what's keeping this going as well is that March on Washington that is expected to happen on March 24th. A lot of the students, obviously, from Stoneman Douglas will be there, as well as many, many other people from around the country. They are planning to have rallies in their own towns.
So they can make money at it.
To keep going. It started at the state level, they tell me.
Basically.
Now they're looking to make this a national issue, a nationwide movement, especially with that hashtag, never.
If we had any green drums, I'd go up in that rubber tree and whack that bitch right now with a chainsaw.
We're talking to the young woman there about social media, the power of social media. Do you have a sense of
good,
how
it's still
much
recording.
that is helping to fuel this movement and draw those massive crowds that we're seeing there behind you?
It's not only helping to draw the crowds out here, it certainly has played a role in all of this, but also you are seeing
So how many doors do we have to move?
people.
3 more?
You had that sort of issue that came up
Oh, ones
overnight
like that?
where some outlets, some right-wing
Only
outlets,
old shitty ones that we don't care about. If there was any door I'd save that door.
Completely baseless, not based in...
That's a solid, good old-time door, but who cares? We don't need it.
At Stoneman Douglas when this happened, basically calling these lines...
I was thinking about saving these other ones for bench, but fuck it, I'll make them. Like I did.
To keep the movement organized, like I said, using that hashtag.
And maybe we go down and we get that cardboard out of there too, you know, that we're always tripping over.
Conversation around the entire country.
Why don't we put that out there?
Rodriguez, stay with us, and thank you for reporting on this historic day.
It's a fire hazard, and we're starting to get shit out of there. We use up space, and maybe we'll even find my
They
cat.
say never again. Let's listen.
What the fuck did you do with
There
those
is no
things?
bigger disrespect than to be sitting in the balcony of the House session with them introducing
That's
us,
probably
and then
$600 worth
turning
of
down
caps.
their chance to fix what they've done.
I think they're single-side etched and everything. There's finials there for them.
This is not fake news, and I am not a fake actor. I'm not an actor.
Wow. Back to school shopping
We
spree,
will
look.
not rest until we have change.
Best.
Way to go, Spencer. Again.
Well, if we put that stuff out, I can call them with a list.
Yeah, as soon as this is done, we'll go do it. I went out because I didn't want you to fall with that
so many
thing.
groups that are helping us in this fight. And
No, I wanted that hardware
now,
off
the Brady campaign has been fighting to end senseless gun violence and do away with assault weapons. We're going to hear now from Chris Brown with the Brady campaign.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Brown, and I serve as co-president of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence.
Damn, Gene, that's a place to go. Brady campaign. Gotta write it down.
Our future stands here
Fuck
today.
me. How stupid have we been?
We mourn the lives of 17 educators and students who did nothing more than go to school
Gun violence.
and get shot and
DOJ
killed on
agreement,
February
Gene.
14th.
Make sense?
You all have taken the time to be here today.
You got it?
To show the world.
I've been trying to figure out a way to do it, and there it is.
Of gun violence. In this
Right
country.
now.
I stand stand here today as part of the Brady campaign, founded by Jim Brady, who was shot in the line of duty as press secretary to Republican President Ronald Reagan.
That's right.
He dedicated his life thereafter to the enactment of the Brady Bill. He and Sarah fought tirelessly for years. This is a long fight, but they never took no for an answer, and neither should you. You see, this is not a Republican or Democratic issue, a blue or red state issue, even a gun owner versus non-gun owner issue. This is an issue about our safety,
a critical day for us,
our liberty, to go to school, to go to country music concerts, to go to theaters, to go to baseball games, to walk down our streets. And each of us is entitled to do that without the fear of being shot. The NRA has a slogan. It's freedom.
Wherever the little red dot is, it reads the temperature there.
Do you call BS?
Yeah, have some fun. Do it yourself, just for the fun of it.
This is not freedom's safest place when our children wake up to go to school and they get shot. It is a nationwide travesty, and we let it happen if we continue to vote in politicians who tweet out thoughts and prayers after every mass shooting and then take... And then take hush money donations from the NRA. People always ask me, what can we do to implement today that can save lives tomorrow? I'm going to tell you 3 things. Number 1, close the loopholes in the Brady law. Make sure that they are closed. Tell Congress to pass the bill that will close those loopholes. Number 2, enact extreme risk orders to ensure at-risk individuals have guns removed from them before they can cause harm to themselves or others. Number 3, pass an assault weapons ban.
Jane, don't say that.
I know many of you were incredibly disappointed with the vote by
What's been done can be undone.
to oppose an assault weapons ban.
Well, you have little faith.
I want
I'm an atheist.
so many of you. The sense
My
of
faith
grief,
is based on different shit.
alienation and anger were palpable.
Politics.
It is
Art of the possible.
unconscionable when politicians put
Do not
special
forget
interests
that. Art
ahead
of the
our public
possible.
safety. As
Not
hard as it
impossible.
may be, remember this.
Well, the
Remember
Florida
the people who
legislature,
voted against
It's
the bill.
impossible to get rid of guns. It's not impossible to get rid of assault weapons. They were banned before Reagan, Gene. See, nobody's even using their history even here. Make it even more powerful. It's powerful as hell the way it is now. Our ballots will end the bullets? Oh. Hope I don't get shot today. Oh my God. There's not a manufactured sign there. Notice that? They're always manufactured.
Each of these measures to close the loopholes in the Brady background check system, to enact extreme risk laws, and to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. You will go a long way to achieve something all of us desperately want. A world in which each of us go about our daily lives where we are free and without the fear of being shot. I'll just end on this. You are the agents of change. Now is your moment. Please lead the way. We at Brady cannot wait to work with you to make history. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Next, we're going to hear from John Harris Maher. John Harris Maurer is with Equality Florida, and he's going to introduce you to a Pulse nightclub survivor. My name is John Harris Maurer with Equality Florida, and we're going to shout it for the people in the back and the people in the building. Equality Florida is the state's leading civil rights organization dedicated to advancing equality for the LGBT community. And we know that gun violence disproportionately impacts minority communities. We are here for the safety of everybody. We need your support with the No NRA Money campaign. Go to NoNRAmoney.org and ask your legislators to take the pledge that they will not accept campaign contributions from the NRA. They will not tout their rankings from the NRA.
Wow.
And they will enact sensible gun violence reform.
Sometimes shit happens, Gene.
I'm honored to introduce
Let's be aware of it.
friend Brandon Wolf, one of our survivors of Pulse. Thank you.
See, they're tying it all together. These kids are dangerous, dude.
On June 12, 2016, I was in a bathroom stall at Pulse nightclub. The smell of blood and smoke was burning my nose. I listened to gunshot after gunshot, and I prayed that I would see my family again. The gun used that night was a Sig Sauer MCX. It's called the Next Generation AR-15, and it has become synonymous with mass shootings in this country. It fired 30 rounds in 1 minute. 13 of them killed my best friends, Drew and Juan. In the days and weeks that followed Pulse, I told myself we would be the last. I vowed that Drew and Juan's deaths would not be in vain. I screamed, never again. I begged for action. I pleaded on national television. But just like every group before me, I was met with silence and apathy. So today, I'm here to ask our lawmakers a few questions. After first graders were gunned down at Sandy Hook, what did you do? Not a damn thing. You ran back to your gun-free spaces in Washington, D.C. and hid under your desks until CNN stopped talking about it. After 49 people, including my 2 brothers, were murdered at Pulse, what did you do? Not a damn thing. You plugged your ears and turned your eyes and hoped that we would stop talking.
Wow, Gene.
And now we're here again.
They're conceptually creative, Gene. Are you seeing it?
14 of them are children. And what did you do yesterday when given the chance to do something about it?
Whoa.
Not a damn thing. Instead, you avoided eye contact once more with these incredible students, and you voted not to keep them safe.
Yeah, he voted against them once.
You sent thoughts and prayers as your remedy, but refused to take action. Well, members of the legislature, I am proud to announce I took your advice. I have been praying. I've been praying for you.
This is good.
I pray that you look in the mirror and figure out your priorities. I pray that you sign the No NRA Money Pledge. And should you continue to choose your wallets over our lives, I pray you enjoy retirement. Because we will vote you out. My friends,
Throw them out. You got it.
Legislators is very clear.
Throw them out. Lock her up. Throw them out. Oh my God, Gene. Oh God.
We victims and
It's biting, man.
are done negotiating with you. Americans are done dying for you. And our children are done being your sacrifices.
Ooh.
The NRA bankrolling us has turned our country into a war zone. You can either fix this nightmare or write your concession speeches.
See, they're going right for their throats. This is smart. I love it.
It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce you to another student from the Parkland shooting. His name is Andre Santos.
This is brilliant what they're doing.
I'm here not just representing the students of Parkland, but the students across the state. I'm representing everybody from Key West to Tallahassee. And I have a message for the people of the
Hashtag we are the change. I
While
got
many
it.
of us weren't there and many of us can't speak for the tragedy that you suffered, we can speak for the silence
Finally,
that occurred afterwards. While I can't speak for the gunshots heard, I can speak for the silence present at my own school. I can speak for empty classrooms and empty hallways. I can speak for minds plagued with fear that we're not being taken seriously enough.
Got it.
To the students of Stoneman Douglas, you guys have done us a great service. You guys have done us a great service because now not only do you have the hurt on your shoulders, but so does the entire state and the entire community that was affected by a senseless tragedy.
They're good speakers, Jake.
And while I have the honor of speaking before you guys today, I also had the honor of speaking to our legislators. And this was both an inspiring and infuriating ordeal, and I'd like to talk about that more. It's inspiring because as I talked to our legislators, I realized there are some who are willing to help. There are some who are willing to enact meaningful legislation that aims to solve the problems that our society is plagued with. I was inspired by the people, the students across the state who were rallying because they want their voices to be heard, just as I want my own to be heard. And it's through the hard work and community effort that we're able to speak before you today and have our voices heard. But while it was inspiring, it was equal parts infuriating.
32
because
minutes
it seems
now.
that while there are people who are willing to help, there will always be people who oppose us. There will always be people
Where are
who
the other
doubt us.
batteries?
There
I
will be
better charge
people
them.
who ignore us. And to these people, I have to say, shame on you.
Yes! Oh God, they're good!
There are people who walk out when hard questions are asked. There are people who look victims in the eyes and still drop meaningful legislation. There are people who are willing to look victims in the eyes, Stoneman Douglas victims in the eyes, and fail legislation that directly correlates with their cause. There are people whose minds won't be changed until their jobs are threatened. So what will we do? We'll threaten their jobs.
Oh, fuck me, yes.
Let's make it so. Let's make it so. Anybody who opposes common sense gun legislation has to fear for their jobs and can enjoy an early retirement.
If they find out about this DOJ agreement, James, they'll be lit on fire.
The Washington Post has a slogan that democracy dies in darkness, and I don't necessarily agree. Democracy dies with disinterest, but as long as our voices are heard, as long as everyone here stands up
What
to
number
the
of
tyranny
those
that's occurring in
killed
our
are
legislative bodies, democracy will
18
never
and
die,
under?
and change will occur. Thank you, Tallahassee. Thank you all. I yield my time.
And And that was Andre
I've never heard so many good
student at
speakers,
Stony
much
Douglas
less
High
young
School,
ones, Jane.
one of many survivors of
Ever.
gun massacres who took to the podium there in Tallahassee to essentially call on the legislature there to pass common sense gun laws or vote them out. That was what they were chanting. You're also looking at live pictures from Parkland, Florida, where students have taken to the streets to march in solidarity with all those who are in
not at
Tallahassee
home
right
or
now,
at the
and
shrink,
frankly
they're in
those
the
at the White
streets
House
marching.
here in Washington as well.
This is
A very powerful
stupefying.
message as we continue to monitor these live pictures and these live protests. And I want to welcome now Mela Baxter, who is a teacher in Florida. Mela, thank you so much for joining us on this historic day.
Stupefyingly wonderful,
I've really never
huh?
seen anything like this. Students of this age letting their voices be heard all across the country, calling for change in Florida, where the state legislature there just voted against even considering legislation that would ban assault weapons. I want to just get your initial gut reaction, all of those images, all of those students we just heard from.
I think that the students have been very motivational, and I'm really glad to see that teacher voices and student voices are being heard on the issues.
And I want to play a little bit of the sound that we heard last hour when students were speaking inside the state capitol, just as impassioned, a number of them sharing their stories of survival. Take a listen.
Never let anybody tell you that you and your voice doesn't matter, and that you can't make a difference, because we're making a difference right now! We are the generation of the future. We have a voice. We are going to use it, and we are going to use it next November for those who can vote in the midterm. 17 of my classmates, friends, and teachers died. No longer can I walk the halls I walked millions of times before without fear and sadness.
To me, to let these victims' lives be taken without any change in return is an act of treason to our great country.
Never again should a child be afraid to go to school. Never again should students have to protest for their lives. Never again should an innocent life be taken while trying to gain an education.
That rallying cry, never again, Mela, these students say they're not going anywhere until they see change. As you know all too well, there have been attempts at change in the past, most notably after Sandy Hook. Do you think this time is different?
Honestly, I don't know. I just hope that as we go forward, that everyone would listen to the voices of the people who are closest to this issue, and not just the voices of politicians on either side of the aisle. I think more work needs to be done with speaking with teachers, administrators, school resource officers, students, and the people who are actually in these positions should be more involved in making these decisions.
You talk about some of the ideas that have been talked about to prevent violence specifically in schools, and one of them is to actually have teachers and more security guards who are armed. You wrote in an op-ed in response to that, "Don't ask me to take the life of another human being." What prompted you to write that, and what's your message?
What prompted me to write that was that it was just my own personal feelings. I'm not expressing the feelings of my school. I'm not expressing the feelings of my fellow teachers, just myself. And I think that all teachers need to have their voices heard on the issue. And my personal feelings are, I work with troubled kids every day, and I do not want the responsibility of having to decide whether or not to take the life of someone. I don't feel that I'm equipped for that. I'm not trained for it. I do know that there are many teachers who do have concealed carry permits for locations other than schools, and some of them may feel like they would be willing to carry on campus if designated, and I would feel very comfortable with some of those people doing that if they go through the proper training. It would make me feel safer. I just don't want to be that person. I don't have that training, and I don't want to have that training. I want to teach my children. I want to prepare them for life beyond high school. I don't want to worry about having to take the life of someone else.
You said something that struck me. You just said that you think the ideas should come from those who are there on the front lines. You are one of those people. So what would you like to see change inside your school, in schools all across the country? What would make schools safer?
I think probably the biggest thing would be to start earlier identifying people who have issues that could turn into the issues that end up manifesting themselves in this way. Work with children from very young ages to make sure that kids are not marginalized, that they're not put in positions where they feel for their entire childhood growing up that they are on the outside and they have no other options. I think trying to stop the problem before it becomes a problem is really the only way to truly fix this.
And we heard from President Trump yesterday, who said he has directed the Department of Justice to ban bump stocks, of course, those devices that can effectively allow weapons to become semi-automatic, to fire hundreds of rounds in just minutes. Do you think this president, who ran on a platform of supporting Second Amendment rights, is going to take any more action beyond that? For example, do you think there's an idea being floated to make background checks stronger? Do you think that's going to happen, and should it happen?
Honestly, I have no idea whether that will happen or not. I am not a political person. I obviously read the news and follow the news, but I'm not really on one side or the other as far as a political standing, and I don't really know what will happen. As far as what should happen, I would just like to see schools be a place where kids can go to get an education and to feel safe, and they're not going to get a good education if they don't feel safe.
And now you wrote that one of your students had an idea about changing things. Can you share that with us?
Yes, we were talking, obviously, with high school students. These issues come up, and when things happen, and with the recent shooting not too far from our area, we were discussing, what would we do if that happened. And we do have drills twice a year where we do lockdown drills, and we practice what we would do in those situations. And the kids were asking me what I would do, and they were like, well, would you want to be armed? Do you think the teacher should be armed, and so forth? And one of the girls in my class said that she thought that there should be one adult, not necessarily a teacher, but a designated adult on each floor of each building who would be properly trained in how to deal with these types of situations. And I thought that was a very mature response for a high school senior to come up with.
Mature indeed, and I think that is one of the things that has struck so many of us, the maturity of all of these young voices that we're hearing from. Before I let you go, what do your students say to you about this moment, Mela? They're growing up in, I think, this reality that for a lot of us we can't imagine, practicing being on lockdown, not being a part of going to school.
They've had varied reactions. A lot of them sometimes will kind of take the humor approach to it, that, this can't happen here. And then there are others who are sometimes terrified to leave the classroom. It's just, the different coping mechanisms that the different students have. There's so much going on in their lives beyond what we see in the few minutes that we have them every day. They just need all the support and help they can get from us when we have them.
All right, Mela Baxter, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, the thoughts of your students with us. We really appreciate it. And we will have much more from Tallahassee when we come back after a quick break.
Cedric, I couldn't even bowl with my grandkids because of the burning, shooting pain in my feet. I hear you, Sam.
Cedric, I couldn't sleep at night because of my diabetic nerve pain.
I hear you, Claire, because my dad struggled with this pain. Folks, don't wait. Step on up and talk to your doctor, because the one thing I keep hearing is, I'm glad I stepped on up. Me too, buddy. If you have diabetes and burning, shooting pain in your feet or hands, step on up and talk to your doctor today.
From this day forward, you will become weapons of Russia.
I think she's recruitable.
Are you willing to work for the American government and to be your spy?
There's something else we're not seeing. You always stay one step ahead. Take your life back.
I'll find a way.
It's narrow, but you know her.
Your brain changes as you get older. but Prevagen helps your brain with an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish. In clinical trials, Prevagen has been shown to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, the name to remember.
In my experience, every successful racer needs a few things. Amazing reflexes, a great team, coordination, and oh yes, this.
Gas, bloating, constipation, and diarrhea can start in the colon and may be signs of an imbalance of good bacteria. Only Philips Colon Health has this unique combination of probiotics. It provides 4-in-1 symptom defense. It's your daily probiotic.
We've been preparing for this day. Over the years, Paul and I have met regularly with our Ameriprise advisor. We plan for everything from retirement to college savings, giving us the ability to add on for an important member of our family. Welcome home, Mom. With the right financial advisor, life can be brilliant.
For adults with advanced non-small cell lung cancer, previously treated with platinum-based chemotherapy, including those with an abnormal ALK or EGFR gene who've tried an FDA-approved targeted therapy, who wouldn't want a chance for another? Who'd say no to Who wouldn't want a chance to live longer? Opdivo, nivolumab. Over 40,000 patients have been prescribed Opdivo immunotherapy. Opdivo can cause your immune system to attack normal organs and tissues in your body and affect how they work. This may happen during or after treatment is ended and may become serious and lead to death. See your doctor right away if you experience new or worsening cough, chest pain, shortness of breath, diarrhea, severe stomach pain or tenderness, severe nausea or vomiting, extreme fatigue, constipation, excessive thirst or urine, swollen ankles, loss of appetite, rash, itching, headache, confusion, hallucinations, muscle or joint pain, flushing, fever or weakness, as this may keep these problems from becoming more serious. These are not all the possible side effects of Opdivo. Tell your doctor about all your medical conditions, including immune system problems or if you've had an organ transplant or lung, breathing, or liver problems. A chance to live longer, because who wouldn't want that? Ask your doctor about Opdivo. Thank you to all involved in Opdivo clinical trials.
We are watching remarkable developments out of Tallahassee. Protesters, many of them students, calling for action on gun control. Take a listen.
I have someone to address. Mr. President. Mr. President, what do I tell my mother? What do I tell her if she asks if I will return home today? What do I tell my brother if he asks if he stays at school? Do I lie? Mr. President, how much is my life worth? Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with senators, representatives, and legislators. Everybody wore a maroon ribbon to support Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. What does that ribbon represent? It represents unity, love, and support for the community. Here's my thing, here's my...
Hey Davey, I just wanted to read you this. I'm to avoid swimming, hot tubs, or any other activities where the possibility of dirty water could enter the eye for 1 month after surgery. I thought I would let you know that.
Republicans and those who also will not vote to reform guns would essentially say anything to avoid dispute. Many have said that this is about mental illness. Now, I admit I am not a psychologist, and I can't diagnose anyone. I'm not qualified to. But are you? You failed. You failed us by destroying our sense of safety. Is our safety less important to you than your own? We are not here to hear excuses. We are here to find solutions. We are not here
Coming!
to listen to you
Coming, one moment. One moment.
to ensure that we and our fellow American students will be safe again in our schools. We are here for the 17. Complicated answers do not scare us. Inactions and false assumptions do. We vow to do whatever it takes to ensure that no child, no teacher, no administrator will ever die again. We will stand strong and in solidarity, and we will not fail.
Okay. What we're going to do from today is Timothy Rock. Start off by saying that mental health is a global issue, so why are school shootings just an issue in America? My name is Timothy LaRock, and I was born in Hollywood, Florida, and I was, in middle school I went to Olson Middle, and I was fortunate to go with one of the victims, Carmen Shentra, and 6th grade was very rough. For me, I didn't have very many friends, and Carmen was perhaps the most compassionate human being I've ever met, and she truly the smartest, most beautiful girl I've ever met. And I've been taught that in life you get what you deserve, and that if you try your hardest, that if you have a heart full of love, if you do everything that you're told, you will get what you deserve, because you deserve it. But unfortunately that's not the case, because she passed away during the Parkland shooting, and it's just very unfair for politicians to take money from the NRA, to lie to us and tell them that they love us as children and that they care about us, and they lie through their teeth, and they tell us that they want to see change too, that they want us to be safe. They care about our safety. They don't care about us. I promise you they don't. If they cared about us, we would be having change. We would be listening to Senate bills. If you want to see a change, you guys will contact your legislators, and you will listen, and you will have them listen to Senate bills 530, 218, 400, 838, 196, 456, and 1476, because we want justice. And we won't stop until we get it. Here's the bill! And for everyone out there that is claiming that we're just crisis actors, or we're simply just puppets being controlled by the liberal media, shame on all of you. Shame on every single last one of you. Because we know the truth. We know that we can make a difference. They don't want us to make the difference. They want us to be afraid. They don't want us to know our true potential. And we, as the children, as the future, as the world, as our future politicians, we know the difference we can make, and we're going to make it. We won't stop until we get it. Thank you very much. Okay, one of the issues we faced over the last 2 years...
And you're listening to impassioned pleas from students from Stoneman Douglas High School calling on lawmakers to make a change. You just heard from Timothy Carrick, who said mental health is a global issue, so why are school shootings just an issue in America? Poignant comments from these students, passionate comments from these students. They say they are determined to make change. They say they're prepared to make sure that lawmakers who oppose them and their agenda are voted out of office. Jim Kavanaugh is an MSNBC contributor and retired ATF agent. Ann Milgram is a law professor and former New Jersey Attorney General. Thanks to both of you for being here. Jim, let me start with you. We are typically talking about the details of how these atrocities unfold, but I just want to get your reaction to what you've witnessed today, because it is remarkable.
Well, these kids are, I shouldn't call them kids, young people, very inspiring. This is historic, I think, a seminal moment. They're standing on the shoulders of everyone from Columbine, Newtown, Pulse, Las Vegas, Texas. They're standing on the shoulders of all those survivors. And I think they're going to make some change, and they're saying some smart things when they talk about the vote and they talk about the money. That's very smart things. I mean, they're going to be running into a rock, Kristen, trying to change the minds of these NRA politicians. It'd be easier to get the devil to outlaw sin than it would be to get these politicians in the pocket of the NRA to change. So that's not going to happen, but I think these students, these young people understand that the vote and the money is critical, and if they stay on those things, they're going to affect some change and give us the reasonable gun laws that can really make a difference. You know, I worked in law enforcement for almost 40 years, most of that time in the ATF. Good gun laws work, and they will help reduce this carnage.
And it is remarkable to listen to these students. They understand the politics of this, or at least they seem to. Is Jim right? Could this moment be different? Could we see some measured changes around the edges this time?
Well, you know, I think what we just heard, the students saying, "You failed us," it's extraordinary. And this really is a conversation in my mind about public safety, about how we protect young people when they go to school, about how we protect people in churches, at concerts. And so I think that we are seeing something we have not seen before, which is these young people who are essentially the victims and in the community that was victimized standing up to say, look, public safety in our lives matter greatly, and what are you going to do about it? And it's really, I think, a different conversation than we've had before, and it is the right conversation. This is a public safety conversation in America, and you know, it's hard to look at what we've seen with school shootings and not know that we have a systemic failure, that we are failing as a government and as a country in how we do this.
And Jim, as I talk to my White House sources, they tell me that President Trump has been personally impacted by this. It's no secret he ran on a platform of supporting the NRA, but yesterday he came out, he said he's directed the Department of Justice to enact regulations that would essentially ban bump stocks. Now, before we get into the reality check of what those legislations may or may not mean, talk a little bit about bump stocks. We know that they were used in the Las Vegas shooting. Why is there such a focus on bump stocks?
Well, bump stocks are a mechanism that go outside of a semi-automatic rifle and essentially allow that rifle to have a cyclic rate of fire that's almost like a machine gun. It's a distinction without a difference, really. And if you're on the receiving end, it's as if you're being shot by a machine gun. It sounds very similar. You can listen to the video and audio from Las Vegas. It's a too clever by half attempt to skirt the National Firearms Act law on submachine guns. I believe we have to look at the congressional intent of 1934 when the Congress said if a human functions the trigger, that's okay, but if the machine functions the trigger, that's got to be closely regulated. And basically the bump stock tries to skirt that. So Congress should pass a law, that would be the best thing, but we live in gun lobby America, and they're not going to pass a law. So it is up to the ATF director, acting director, the Attorney General, the President. I would say rule against it, and then still try to get a law passed. We've got to do something for our citizens. It does make the semi-automatic gun much more deadly, and you know, we're just lucky we haven't seen it in another mass killing.
And the NRA says they're not going to support legislation, and so it seems like it is a very steep climb to expect legislation on bump stocks. And the other part of that reality check is that these regulations will likely get challenged in court. So what do you anticipate when it comes to that? And then also this discussion about stiffer background checks.
So I think that if the ATF,
And jump in, and then I'll have Jim have the last word.
So I think, Jim is right, that if we think about the ATF doing this, we will see potential legal challenges that are brought by the NRAs and others. I don't know if they actually have legal standing, but I think it's fair to assume that we'll see some legal challenges. But I also agree that bump stocks they're a way to try to subvert existing laws. They're a way to try to do through back doors what we don't allow to lawfully be done through the front door. And so I do think there's a very strong argument that bump stocks should be immediately, the regulation should be changed. But of course, the bigger point is that legislation would be very helpful because it means that the next president can't just change the regulations. And so I think that as much as it would be helpful to change the regulations, that the ideal here is to really see a change in the laws.
And Jim, your final thought?
Well, unfortunately, the president listens to the last person he talked to, so he's going to be wishy-washy on this stuff. I agree with Ann, legislation is best, but, I've advised the acting director of ATF personally I think he should take a stand on this. I would outlaw them if I was in a position to do it. Not outlaw them, but put them under the National Firearms Act. That's where they should be. If Congress won't do it, ATF should do it, Justice should do it, the president can do it. Somebody, for the love of God, please do it to protect our citizens. We need the background checks. We need stronger gun laws. We need a real comprehensive rewrite of our laws.
Jim Kavanaugh and Ann Milgram, thank you so much for that very important discussion today. I really appreciate it. And as we continue to monitor these remarkable and historic protests out of Tallahassee, I want to bring in Susan Page, who's the Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today, and Jonathan Capehart, opinion writer for the Washington Post and MSNBC contributor. Susan, they are starting to sing We Shall Overcome. You and I were talking about the fact that Oprah compared this moment to the civil rights movement. Is this moment different?
To the freedom riders, mostly younger people, who started doing things like insisting on registering to vote or protesting at lunch counters that were segregated. So I think we don't know yet, but it has been true that our gun control politics, our gun violence politics has been petrified for decades. And this is at least suggests that it might be possible for a new generation that has spent their entire lives living under the threat of mass shootings at the schools they attend could shake that. Because I tell you, you and I know that it's very hard for a politician to hear kids
we live under those
the way they were talking and then just go back to business as usual.
Atom bombs, right?
Jonathan, it was the parents who took the lead. There were 20 elementary
We're worried about shooters. We're worried about the whole city being wiped out.
Former President Obama at the time said, all in all, it's a pretty shameful day.
We jumped under our desk. They didn't just talk to us.
You as well. You were covering the administration then. Could this moment be different because of what Susan is saying? Because we're hearing from these young people who are so outspoken and so smart in the arguments that they're making.
I think Susan is right. These are the most extraordinary speeches I have heard in a very long time. And I sent out a tweet that said, nothing has given me more hope in the future than listening to those students. They speak in a way that I never could have dreamed of speaking at the ages of 15, 16, 17, especially after the horror that they've lived through. And among the things that more than one said that sparked this hope in me. We're talking about a generation that's grown up with iPhones, that's grown up with instantaneous access to information, entertainment. Any question that they have can be answered just by this powerful thing in their pocket. More than one kid, and I'm going to call them kids, because children have always led us to the future. Every one of them said, we know this isn't going to happen overnight. We know this is going to take time. One of the young people said, I know in my lifetime this will happen. It won't happen today, it won't happen tomorrow, it might not happen next week, but it is going to happen. The fact that these young people who have their lives ahead of them are bound and determined to make sure that we never forget, as they've been saying, that they make sure that their politicians know you failed us. Another one said, they don't care about us. How can any politician in any state house, in the halls of Congress here, listen to those words and then ignore them? These young people are not going to forget.
So that may happen. and this is certainly a moment where it's very inspirational. On the other hand, the NRA has played a long game. There have been times when they've been in battle before, faced political pushback. They have managed to maintain their enormous political power in town and counted on people to move on to other issues, to have other concerns. So I'm not convinced that this is going to be a sea change, but I think it has at least got the potential to be that.
Well, we are watching with wonder, really, at these very young, incredible protesters as they voice their message. Susan, Jonathan, thank you so much for helping us to talk about this today, and we'll be right back.
Business is in my blood. I'm the daughter of 2 entrepreneurs, and so I had a front row seat to the excitement, but also the demands that come with running a company. And as a business owner myself, I know that the challenges are ever changing.